welcome to another Good Gut Live. We are here live with you every Friday. Today is a very special live as we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Joel Gator Warsh, and he is here to really fill us in on the very best when it comes to pediatrics. He's very integrative. He likes to find things, get to the root, understand what's going on with your kids, with your family. And that is very important because kids are our future. Dr. Warsh, I'll let you kind of take it from there. Give yourself a full intro for everyone listening.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on and good to see you again. So, yeah, I'm a pediatrician. I work in Los Angeles. I did all the regular medical training, but I just got a little bit frustrated with the regular system. And so that's what led me to start learning about integrative medicine and natural medicine. And I always say this, I'm not against Western medicine at all. I think we have lots of great, amazing things that we've discovered, but I feel like it's far too quick these days to jump to medicine. And there are a lot of other things that we need to be focused on. And one of the big reasons why I got into pediatrics in the first place was to try to get ahead of issues and try to prevent illness and prevent disease, which we're not doing a very good job at these days. Chronic disease rates are skyrocketing, and about 50% of kids have a chronic disease these days. And so it's really important that we get back to the basics and start to focus a lot more on root cause. And that's what I've been doing much more recently and trying to get more involved. And I also have been really frustrated over the last few years about censorship and discussions about things like vaccines. And so that's what even led me to write a book about vaccines. I have a parenting book that's already out, and I have a vaccine book. I guess, well, if people are listening live, then it's not out yet. It'll be out in a week or two, but if they hear it on the podcast, it'll be out by then. And I really feel like we need balanced, nuanced conversations about everything. I don't feel like it really helps to have pro or anti anything. I think it's important that we have discussions on all topics and get the best science we possibly can so we can have our kids be as healthy as they can. And we don't get there by censorship. We get there by having discussions.
Yes, and for those listening, I mean, we say this all the time, but we're all about pulling from whether it's Eastern and integrative and functional, and even there's some good in Western and like pulling from that and plant-based and Ayurveda and all there's so much good that we can pull from, and we're all about kind of taking, hey, this makes sense and this is good, and we're gonna take that and put that together and not just be like, oh no, we have to stay in this box and we have to be divided and we're on this side and you're on that side and we're going to hate you. It's like, no, yes, there's lots of frustration in Western medicine, but there's some good. If I need a surgery or emergency surgery, I'm glad I'm in Southern California, right? And not
Right.
like somewhere else in a third world country. Like I get that, right? So we
There
have
are no
to,
teams, right? There's no such thing. It's ridiculous. Like
right.
it's become very tribal, and like you're on the Western team or this team, or a Republican or liberal, and make America healthy again, and all this stuff. And it's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, we just want to be healthy. Like, how maybe not
Yeah.
everyone agrees on how you get there, but we all want the same thing. We all want kids to be healthy. We want them to grow up without diseases. We want them to thrive. And this tribalism, these teams don't make any sense. Like, I've been involved in a lot of Maha Make America Healthy Again type things, and people will be like, oh, like this Republican, whatever. I grew up in Canada. I live in California. I can't even vote. So like
Right.
on any side, and like this would have arguably been a supremely democratic thing, like a couple of years ago. And yes, I know like it got picked up in politics a little bit, but it's not political in any way. It makes no sense. I mean, this is something that is both sides. Everybody has kids. It doesn't matter what your political affiliations are. And I've been talking about kids' health forever. And obviously because I'm a pediatrician, and all of a sudden it's political. I mean, it's great that we're talking about it. I think that's good, but it's not
Yes.
political. It doesn't have anything to do with that, and it's ridiculous. So we just need to talk about it for our kids. That's it.
Well, you said it. I think you said it like before. Like you said, 50% of our kids have a chronic disease. Is that? Would you say that's or it's probably more, or would you say that's pretty accurate, or would you say it's a little skewed even upward?
It depends. I mean, there are many different studies and many different statistics, and it kind of depends on what you include as
Mhm.
a chronic disease. But if you're including prediabetes, diabetes, obesity, then yeah, it's probably more than 50% at this point. But at least it's somewhere between 30 and 50%, no matter which study you look at. And no matter what the number is, if it's 35% or 40, it's like, people fight about these things. Like, who cares? That's way too many. It used to be about
Right.
5%. And,
Right.
and and almost nobody used to be overweight or obese, and now half the kids are, and more than that for adults. So we have a big, big, big problem. I mean, just look at asthma, allergies, autoimmune conditions. All these things have tripled over the last few decades. It's like 30% of kids have some sort of allergic type condition. That's nuts. Like that should not be that way. Most adults don't remember autism when they were growing up. Most adults don't remember autoimmune conditions or obesity or asthma or allergies. I mean, obviously these things existed. They were certainly around. No question about it. People had some allergies that they were there, but it wasn't like it was every other person, every other kid, and multiple kids in every classroom. It just was not that way. There's a big change that's happened over the last few years. Yes, we're better at diagnosing things. Yes, we're more aware. That certainly makes a difference, and it certainly does add to the numbers a little bit. But that is not what's going on.
So what would you say is, well, just a couple points there. I mean, like, yeah, and I have this like when I think about this long enough, I go like, man, we're gonna get to a point where we forget how healthy we were, right? We're gonna get to a point where after decades and decades go on, this becomes normal, where it's like, yeah, food allergies are normal and intolerances are normal and all these neurological autoimmune are normal and that's kind of scary, right? Like that's one big point. And then with all of that, I know it can be extremely overwhelming, but what do you feel is going on? I guess I just to get right into it, like what in the last, I would say even 80 years. I mean, I know we talk about it and we have some ideas with this, and maybe I think we're on the same page a lot. But what do you feel is going on? Because we're not here to demonize like vaccines and be like it's all the vaccine. And there's some people that do that online and they really just kind of go head first with vaccines. But I mean, I wanna hear from you, and then I'll definitely chime in, but what do you feel is, like, going on?
Yeah, and there are a few points there. So I think to start with, one of the big one of the major concerns that I have is what you said about normalizing. I think that's a huge mistake, and that's a big problem that we're seeing, and it's a big problem in the media. Is this normalization of disease? Like, oh, obesity is normal. Oh, being overweight is normal. Oh, we're just better at diagnosing autism. Oh, we're just better at this, and that doesn't make any sense. Like that doesn't help our kids. It should not be that way, and even if we are better at diagnosing things, which we are, that still doesn't exclude the fact that these kids have a condition that we should be figuring out why. So I don't think it really makes any difference at the end of the day. I think what matters is we need to be focused on the kids that are having all these chronic conditions
Mhm,
and what are the triggers. And the answer is we really don't know. Like we don't know what's going on. I certainly have theories and we'll talk about it, but
mhm,
we actually don't have a good understanding because this hasn't really been a focus of research or discussion over the last few years. Because whenever it's brought up, it's like, oh, it's, we're just better diagnosing. Oh, being overweight is normal. Oh, it's just genetics. And that doesn't make any sense. Genetics don't change that much over a few years. Certainly, genetics play a factor, and your genetics will influence how likely you are to express a condition, or it'll be impacted by a mixture of your genetics and the environment. But you don't go from 1 in 150 with autism 20 years ago to now 1 in 31. It was 1 in 36, just 2 years ago, and it's 1 in 12.5 boys in California. I mean, those numbers are staggering. Like you don't look around at adults and see 1 in 12 adult males have autism. Like that's insane. Yes, there are more mild cases that we are diagnosing, but the
mhm,
severe cases, the children that have difficulty with speech, have low IQ, are stimming, that are
mhm,
self-harming. Like these things are significantly on the rise. In 25 to 35% of kids are nonverbal with autism, and that severe autism is increasing. So yeah, I think the better diagnosis is certainly a part of the mild autism,
mhm,
especially in adults. There are many adults that maybe would have qualified but just never did. But that's not what's going on. I mean, we have this increasing rate, and the question is why. And hopefully, that's something we're going to explore over the next few years. I mean, whether you like RFK or not, that is what he's talking about. He's talking about we want to get back to research, we want to look into everything, and we'll put it all on the table, and we're going to try to figure out what are some of those triggers because we need to be able to have unbiased research as best as we can and say, look, here are the top 10 things that are contributing to diabetes. Here are the top 10 things that are contributing to autism in terms of environmental factors. Like
mhm,
these are what we need to know so that way we can start to make some changes at the policy level, at the big corporation level, in your home. I mean, as of right now, I would say it's food and toxins are the big thing. I think that we have really crappy food that doesn't have all the nutrients that we need, and we're living in a toxic soup. We're just surrounded by all these chemicals, and I think those are the two big things. You mentioned vaccines, and I think that we have to have vaccines on the table for everything. Whether it is or isn't, I don't think we really know at this point. We can say the science is settled, but that's definitely not true. I mean, it has not been studied rigorously in that way. We certainly haven't studied kids that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So I think it needs to be on the table as one of the many things that we explore as it relates to some of these conditions. Not to say that we shouldn't give vaccines, but maybe there's an ingredient in there that contributes to asthma. Maybe there are some changes we could do in the schedule to decrease rates of autoimmune condition. I don't know. Maybe it has nothing to do with that, but I think that should be on the table just like everything else should. And when we talk about autism, I've taken care of kids that never had vaccines that have autism, so it's certainly not the only thing.
Mhm.
But should we say that it's categorically impossible? No, I don't think so. I think we should have everything on the table, and we should look at everything and make sure that we get the best possible science. And that's how we get answers. And no, you think a doctor wants to give something and then have a kid have a chronic condition because of the thing they gave? Of course they don't. We need to figure out what we're doing so we can make it better. That's it.
Yeah, and that kind of goes nicely into a little bit of the microbiome and everything because what's very interesting, and we just look at the facts as well, right? We're just going like, 75% of women now don't exclusively breastfeed past 6 months. C-section is on the rise. We look at fiber intake of adults and children just drastically decreasing in the last even 40 to 50 years, let alone 80 to 100 years, which is even a bigger decrease. You look at all the chronic, you could look at stat after stat after stat and go, all these things coming together do make this perfect storm of just chronic disease. And it is wild. And you mentioned food and toxins, and that's why we do love the gut microbiome, because we are going to eat food and we are going to come into contact with toxins, right? And yes, it has increased in this industrialized revolution, and as we get more and more industrialized and modern, but the gut microbiome is there to be this buffer. It is there to protect against so many toxins. It's there to bind toxins. It's there to help break down toxins. It's there to help break down your food, even crappy food, and kind of, bind to those things. And so this gut microbiome, and really our gut is this buffer system to help us and aid us. And as we see that breakdown, we do have to ask why and what the heck is going on. Um, in that, I mean, what and there is a massive, like, yeah, gut autism connection, and that is so pertinent and important when it comes to B vitamins and how they're absorbed. I guess if a parent comes to you, what are you doing with that parent and that child? Like, how are you, I guess, walk us through that. Like, mom is concerned. She doesn't know what's going on with her child. Maybe they're having a whole host of symptoms, from constipation to headaches to allergic reactions. Like, take us through that. Like, how are you helping your patients, or what are you kinda doing with the parent and patient?
For sure. And what you mentioned, even before we get into like what we do, I think
Yeah,
it's so important just to kind of linger there for a second on the microbiome and just the environment of the body, right? I mean, the
yeah,
body is an ecosystem, and you hit it, you hit the nail on the head. It's like it's not one thing. And I don't think it's one thing. And anybody who wants to minimize it to vaccines or to this toxin or that toxin or fluoride, like that doesn't make any sense. Our body's an ecosystem, and we're very lucky it can handle a lot, right? Just like you said, it can
yeah,
handle a lot. And I think we need to think about it in that way. But you mentioned it perfectly. Like where there are all these different insults that are happening to the body from the day of birth, even from before birth, and our body can handle just so much. And at some point, it falls off a cliff, and there are too many toxins, not enough nutrients. The microbiome is screwed up too much, or in a way, and it expresses itself in different ways. Maybe that's autism for some, autoimmune conditions for others,
right.
headaches, migraines, rashes, whatever it is. And I think that that's what's going on. We have more babies born by C-section. We have more formula. We have more chemicals and toxins. We have a whole bunch of vaccines. We have medications. I mean, all these things kind of play into a system that affect people differently. And some kids get a vaccine and are totally fine, and other people have reactions to things. Just like you have a medication, you could take Tylenol, or you could walk by a peanut. And some people have a serious reaction to a peanut. Like everybody reacts differently to all sorts of chemicals and toxins depending on your genetics and your environment. And that's the way that we are, and that's how I approach it with parents. I think that's the first thing to understand is we're an ecosystem, our body is being bombarded, and for many kids and adults it's just too much. And so as a parent, I mean, it's not easy because we don't know all the answers, but I think you can start by peeling back the layers and saying, all right, well, what are the things that I do have some control over, and how can I decrease the toxic exposure to my kids? How can I improve their lifestyle and what they're doing towards health? And let me just think through those things. And I think that that's where the conversation comes in. That's where the functional aspect comes in, which is tough because you need a lot of time. You have to be kind of a detective worker, and the parents have to do a lot of the work themselves, realistically, or you have to work with someone that you can speak to for a long time. But I think the first step is taking back your a little power, and having an understanding that this autoimmune condition didn't just magically appear. It's in the context of their environment, and that's not to say that you should feel blame or shame for what you did. You didn't know, and maybe it has nothing to do with anything. And yeah, some things are totally genetic, but most things are not totally genetic. And even if they are totally genetic, still your environment makes a big difference of how you express and how severe the symptoms are. So I think if you focus back on, okay, what am I doing, and start to focus on making decisions that have to do with health and wellness, then that gets most parents a long way. And that starts with reading labels, thinking about the food that they're eating, thinking about how they're going to the bathroom, like you mentioned. Like, are they constipated? That means you're keeping those toxins in more. That means the gut
Mhm.
microbiome is, potentially screwed up a little bit. What are we cleaning with at home? What clothes am I buying for them? What am I spraying in my home? What am I putting on their skin? What sunscreen am I buying? Like every single decision we have been taught to go with faster, cheaper, easier, buy the colorful thing. And you have to get away from that. You have to start to get back to, all right, what has the most minimal ingredients? What are the words that I actually know what they are? Is this something that was local? Was it sprayed in a bunch of things? Like the you don't have to never have a chemical again. Like that's not going to happen. We live in the real world. But if you decrease your exposure by 5%, that might be enough for your body to be like, all right, well, now I can handle things. I can kind of rebalance.
Mhm. And I speak to that as a child who was chronically ill, and I call it like surface level illness. I think had it gone on longer, it would have gotten deeper and deeper. It's like a little drill, right? And it's going very slow, and it's slowly drilling and drilling and drilling. And luckily, I stopped that drill, so to speak. But I remember just allergies. I'd get hives. I'd always get sick. I'd get hay fever, postnasal drip, migraines, just constantly sick. And when I started to change, I started to exercise more, and I started to take out certain ingredients in my food, and just barely little changes, you felt that lift of like, oh wow, I'm not getting as sick as much, and oh, I'm not getting these allergies as often. And I remember being like, oh, this is powerful, like, and that's what got me into nutrition. I was like, wait, what am I doing here? And I started reading books on it, and like, oh wow, food does shape you. And for all those listening, like, really, yeah, the key, this medium is the microbiome, because we talk about your genetics. Well, it goes into the fancy words like nutrigenomics and proteomics, and this idea of your food influencing your genetics, which now research is going, oh, wow, that does happen. And how that happens is the microbiome and the virome. We are exchanging DNA with these microbes and even viruses. Viruses live in and on us so much so that they have their own virome. It's an entirely separate and massive microbiome, so to speak, but it's a biome because they're not technically microbes. But so we know all this, we're figuring all this out. And what's crazy is just in the last 20 years, we really started figuring this out and going like, oh, these microbes aren't just here to help you poop, right? They do so much more than that. And it's like, whoa, they do more than we ever thought possible. And so as you're saying all this, yeah, like I would say, and what something we say very often is just, if you think about your microbes and everything you do, like, is this spray going to hurt my microbe? Are these actions I'm taking helping to feed my microbes? Is what I'm buying at the grocery store going to feed or harm our microbiome? That's a really easy, like, foundational level, low hanging fruit, or even just a thought to kind of shift your mindset a little bit and go, if I'm thinking with the smallest in mind, these microbes, these tiny living creatures that I protect and house within me, and it is this inner ecosystem I'm protecting. I want to protect that. And let me just move throughout my life, my kid's life, my spouse's life, whoever you love and it's important, and go, I want to protect that this nice little inner ecosystem, right? I'm not going to stick my hand in there and smash it. Or if I have this terrarium, I'm not going to spray like oil in there and harmful chemicals. And I mean like motor oil, not vegetable oil. We can get into that though. But
Well, and can I just say on that, like
yeah.
that's the thing that like it's a great analogy because it's so much more. The human body is complicated, but it's not that complicated when you think about it in the very most basic sense. Like if you think about a fish or you think about a plant, like you're saying, like a terrarium, it's like, okay, what do they need? They need clean water, sunlight,
Right.
you know, and you don't give if the water of a fish bowl is dirty, you don't give them medication. You clean the water. Like you don't if you spraying a bunch of chemicals on a plant, it's going to die. It's either the food they get, like, that's it. That's just we're the same thing. Like, and I'm
Right.
seeing, like, there's a question here about, being
Yeah.
anxiety provoking and broken down in a simple way. I mean, the simple way is, do you know where the thing came from, what is sprayed in, what's in it, and just go as simple as possible. The more simple you can go with everything, the less likely it's going to have exposure to a bunch of chemicals. It's going to have been shipped from across the country. I mean, yes, sometimes it can be more expensive, but it doesn't have to be. Like, we have to go back to simple. A real ingredient is a real ingredient. Is it from something local? I mean, I spend most of my, like, not most, but, like, I spend a good chunk of money on food and on procuring the best possible food that I can. And we go to a place, in our area, called LA Home Farm, and it's like they basically just get stuff from local farms. They do all the sourcing, and it's like a tiny little place. There's only a few things that are available. It's whatever's local and fresh. And you have to think, like, if you're getting this banana from, like, some other country, like, it was picked before it was ripe. It was sprayed in a bunch of chemicals when it was being grown. It was sprayed in a bunch of chemicals to ripen it. When you pick something off a plant, how long does it last? How long does it last if you pick a berry? Like 2 days, 3 days, maybe five if you're lucky. You think that thing you got from Peru or whatever was picked, within 5 days? It was picked like 3 weeks ago, and then it's how many times it was sprayed so it doesn't go bad, and then it's sprayed again so it ripens. Like, you have to think about those things and just try to get the most local fresh produce that you can whenever you can. Doesn't mean you can never have a
Mhm.
banana from Mexico. It just means, like, just be aware that these things come from other places, and the more of that stuff that you eat and consume, the less nutrients that you are getting. And that's still better than eating something that's prepackaged and with a bunch of other chemicals. So it's all levels. And can you eat a birthday cake? Sure. That's the end of the world. You have a chip once in a while. That's not what it is. Like you said, it's small things that add up. It's the
Yeah.
small things every day. And if you're doing mostly good, and mostly eating healthy, mostly not spraying, your body can handle it.
For those of you that don't know, Dahlia was our first patient. She struggled with SIBO and IBS and so many GI problems on a day to day basis, hunched over, causing so many other issues. We wish we had a protocol in place, a program in place that led her through step by step, inch by inch, and really guide by guide so she had everything at her fingertips. Now we have that. That is our Good Gut SIBO IBS program. You can do it 100% plant based, you can customize it, but it is one of the only programs that is geared towards plants that can help you customize plants, that can help you tolerate more plants, and really gets to the root of your SIBO, of your IBS, of your ISO, SIFO, IMO, and any other type of overgrowth. Yeah. And that's so funny. Yeah, there's so much there. And I know, I mean, yeah, I love the comment we're seeing and the questions. And it's like it can be overwhelming, but yes, like you're saying, it is just picking where you want to start, or just I always say like low-hanging fruit, pun intended, where whether you're actually picking the low-hanging fruit from your backyard or it's the metaphorical low-hanging fruit, going like, I'm gonna switch out this pasta for that other lentil pasta, or I'm gonna do more fruits even, and everyone loves fruit, right? It could be as simple as that, or I'm like, I'm shifting from this supermarket to the farmer's market, or I'm totally getting rid of all my cleaning products, and whatever seems, I guess, the easiest for you. I mean, that's how we started, and look at us now, over 16 years later, we're integrative health professionals, right? We just kept building on it in those layers, and it is. I just posted a video of a strawberry I got at our farmers market, and we do shop mainly at our farmers market because we've literally been talking to some of these farmers at our farmers market for over 10 years. They're like family. They give us hugs. We know them
Mhm.
personally. They're not lying to us. We can taste, smell, see, and even touch. We've visited some of their farms over the years just because we've gotten to know them, and we know how they're growing the food. That is not the norm, right? But it's as simple as, I would say, merging kind of the modern with kind of the old. And we have to find that balance where we go, these
Correct.
markets where we exchange produce, right? These farms, and I know you've been to the regenerative farm with us, where we can eat and smell and see and taste and touch. Like, these things are powerful, right? We can't forget those things. We need to
No, for
merge that with the modern. That
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is the key.
and that is the message, right? That's the message. Okay, it's not about throwing out all of modern medicine. It's about having some humility in health and medicine today and say, look, we used to die when we were 40, right? So we haven't gotten everything wrong, right? Like we're living longer than we used to 100 years ago, but life expectancy is not really going up anymore. If anything, it's going down or it's kind of staying the same.
Mhm.
We have chronic disease rates going up. So, what have we done over the last 20 years that is different? And let's keep some of the good, but let's figure out where we maybe didn't go exactly in the best direction and find some middle ground and some balance because we're clearly doing some things that are harming our health and not improving things. If we were on the same trajectory, we could be living on average to 100, 120, but that just stopped because now we're seeing those, the infectious disease rates went down in terms of dying from infectious disease. So that's good. But that chronic disease has gone up, and we need to now focus a little bit more on that and prevent some of that, so that way we can see that life expectancy and that health go in the right direction. And to the question again about the anxiety and what you mentioned, it's not about doing everything. It can seem overwhelming, but the reality is wherever you are, you just start moving forward. You take steps. If you never go to a farmer's market, go once a month. If you never cook, cook one meal a week. If you cook one meal a week, cook 2 meals a week. If you never buy something organic, buy a little bit organic, and you just start to move forward. And as you feel better and you do more of these things, then it does snowball to the point where you can become, woo woo like you and I, where which is not, it's not woo woo, but it's like, okay, you go to the farmer's market, you get to know these people, you go to the farms, and you realize just how important food is. And you realize that that's the way that it always was. I mean, you should know where your food's coming from. And if you can at least 5 or 10% of your food come from a place that they take really good care. They don't spray in a bunch of chemicals. We're getting super good nutrients. The soil's really good. Then that is a huge net win. And you don't have to know literally every single thing that you're eating. That's not probably realistic if you live in a city. If you want to move to the middle of nowhere and start a farm, go for it. But that's not the way that most people live, right? We
Right.
live in the city, so let's find some middle ground where okay, let's know where 5 or 10% of our food comes from, and let's make sure that we're getting the best quality food from that and try to buy from them as much as we can.
We have another question. I know it's coming from Instagram, but this is good. And I want to touch on some points you said, but uh, shout out Wild Joy Health. Can you give us more tools to think about meat and eggs, what to look for? So this one's, and if I could touch on that just really quickly, where that is honestly why we went more plant-based is what Dr. Gator said. Earlier was basically this idea of you're eating a banana from Ecuador. We don't really think of that. You're in Trader Joe's just grabbing bananas or Costco or wherever. Most bananas are coming from South America. And that from that time that banana was harvested to when you're actually going to eat it could be several weeks, if not several months, depending, right? So that is the reality. Animals are very similar. A lot of people don't realize that ground meat you're buying at the grocery store could come from multiple different cows from multiple different countries over multiple different weeks, right? So it's pretty wild when you think about it. And when we started getting into that research and diving deeper and understanding that, we're going, oh, the animal microbiome, right? The eukaryotic cell is very different from the plant cell. And so the microbiomes are very different. Once the animal dies, the microbiome starts to shift. You are getting this decomposition action. That is why we stink when we die. That is why if you ever come across a dead animal, our dog likes to bring in a dead rabbit or come across a dead rat and we're like, "Oh, it's putrid," right? We literally have a whole classification of microbes in that putrefaction category that really plants don't have. So, when we started understanding this, we're like, oh my gosh, one, it shifted how we bought our food, but then it did move us more towards plants, which we are of that mindset where in general we need to be eating more plants anyway. But it helped us go like, oh, we're as we're trying to seek the better quality, plants kind of in that less risky category, especially if you're buying conventional animal products. So I just want to comment there, but I'll let you take it. So yeah, I guess what is your approach if you are buying meat, eggs, or what do you recommend, or what are you seeing for patients, or yeah, all of the above?
I mean, for me, most food, I try to think about it in the way of, well, how did we evolve? How did we eat a few hundred years ago? Because genetics doesn't change that much, right? We still have the same genetics that we had for the most part a few hundred years ago. And we didn't eat food that was shipped across the world, right? That
Right.
just wasn't the way that it was. You ate whatever was local, and you ate things that were killed that day or that week or whatever. You weren't eating things with except for in very rare occurrences. Like if you were eating an animal protein. It was like the local whatever, and it was killed and butchered, and everybody ate it, and you ate it over the next couple of days or weeks, and that's what you ate. And things were not factory farmed back then. I mean, there were no big places where they were shooting cows up with hormones and chickens up with hormones and antibiotics and all these things. Like they just were animals, and they were out in the pasture, and they were eating, and they lived a good, relatively good life. And that's the way that things were, and that's what we're meant to eat. We're not meant to eat these factory farmed foods. It's not to demonize that. It's just to say that the reality is that when you super produce something, when you mass produce, whether it's animal or plant, you lose a lot with that. Like that's not the way that the environment is supposed to be. You're not supposed to be in some like monocrop field with just corn everywhere, sprayed in a bunch of chemicals and pesticides. Like it's supposed to be, mixed in with other things, and animals moving around and pooping on the ground and bugs flying through and eating it. And like now you have all these things where we don't want the pests, right? So we spray pesticide. But if a pest can't eat it, then like should we be eating it? I don't know, right? So it's a whole like there's a balance between making sure we have enough food for everybody and also for eating in the right way. But I think from a personal level, you can't think about everybody. You got to think about yourself. And if you want to eat differently, then I think you need to go back to just the very basics. And we're talking about meat and eggs. If you're going to be buying that, can you get it from somewhere local or semi-local? Eggs, especially, like it's pretty easy to have chickens and get eggs, so you can do it yourself. I mean, that's not what most people are going to do, but it's pretty easy. So that's like the ideal if you can get some good chickens and raise them yourself. But there are lots of places that are local that have eggs if you can get them. But just think, like, what kind of eggs do you want to eat? How do you want the chickens to be? You want them to be roaming around eating normal food that they're grazing around, and that's it. You don't want them to be mass produced. You don't want them to be fed all these chemicals and hormones. So try to buy, if you can, if you go in the store, things that are, pasture raised and regenerative farms and cage free, and as many words as you can. All those words are good. You don't want a lot of words when you're talking about ingredients, but you want a lot of words when we're talking about like how they're treated, which is ridiculous because you shouldn't need any of these words. It's just the animals that live. But like you want a farm that like thinks about these things. So if you can get to know the farms, great. And the internet's a great thing. You can do some research now, and we're lucky you can have things shipped to you, especially when it comes to meat. You can buy a lot of meat, and it's quite expensive, but much cheaper than if you were buying it consistently. So you can buy like a big box of meat from a great farm, and they'll send it to you once a year. It'll be $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is. Not super cheap, but if you're buying meat over the whole year, that's what's going to end up costing. But you're going to get the like super high quality meat, and you can keep it in your freezer, and it was just killed. How the animals were treated, and that's generally what we do. I mean, we'll buy like
Mhm.
you can pre-order like quarter pound, or you can order several pounds of meat of different kinds, and they'll just send you whatever they have, and then you get a box of it, and it lasts you for several months. And it's much cheaper than buying it at the store. It's just more expensive that one time.
Mhm.
But that you're getting super good quality from a place that actually cares about their animals, and that is the way that I think we should be doing it. I mean, I think we need more local places so that you don't have to do that. Like, I don't think we should be buying in mass.
Mhm.
Much better to be buying locally and getting it, as it's fresh. But that's one way to do it if you don't have this around you, and it kind of depends on where you live. Like if you live in Texas or something, then you have a lot more access to meat.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, I know we are more plant-based. Dahlia and I, even our daughter was born fully plant-based and everything. And that's not to say, again, with our patients that we see, we've moved in that direction. But a lot of our patients, again, we have no judgment. A lot of our patients come to us eating animals. They continue to eat animals. We get that. A lot of our patients come to us because they can't eat plants. So they're stuck eating more animals because of these, like we were talking earlier, allergies and intolerances, and really it's their gut microbiome that's a wreck. So I say this all as just context, right? But with that, yeah, it's important because some of our patients are eating animals. They're surviving on animals because their gut microbiome is so wrecked. And ideally, yeah, they're eating better quality. And something we always get from our patients is like, oh my gosh, that's so expensive. It's like, well, yeah, like high quality is expensive, especially nowadays, because we've created systems to really hone in on going cheap, ultra processed, or highly industrialized. And we've made it seem like it's normal for this carton of eggs or whatever animal product to be so cheap because it's heavily subsidized, because we've created such unhealthy environments, be all in the name of making it cheaper, make it cheaper. Instead, we should be saying make it better quality, make it regenerative, where the animal's healthy, the environment's healthy. That should have been the goal. Hopefully, we moved that goalpost a little bit. But all that to say is, the beautiful thing is when people are paying more for the animals they're eating, they might then add more plants and go like, oh, I'm gonna add some of these lentils as well as to what I'm eating, and I'm gonna add more of the greens. And I mean, the list can go on and on, right? All the legumes and the nuts and seeds, and oh, I can get amino acids from there as well. Yeah, this meat I'm buying is so freaking expensive because it's regenerative, certified organic. And now they start to add in more plants, right? And we see that in some of our patients. That's also a mechanism to add in more plants. We are big fans of adding more plants, where that it's a win-win, right? You're eating more plants, you're eating more fiber, you're building your gut microbiome, which is going to help protect you from a lot of these environmental toxins as you're shifting habits, and it becomes a win-win. And
Yeah,
we
can
do have
we
some.
talk about the money for a second? 'Cause I think that's a really good point you brought up. I think it's important.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say, I hear about that a lot, right? And I agree. If you want to eat really healthy, it definitely costs more right now in general. It doesn't always. I
Mhm.
mean, on the very basic level, you can go to the grocery store, you can look at the ingredients, and you can look at 2 bags of chips, and you can buy the better one, and it can be the exact same price. So it doesn't always have to be more expensive, but generally, if you want to eat really healthy or the healthiest possible, it is more. You're completely correct. That's the system that we live in. Certainly, sometimes I get called like ableist or other, what other words that people want to call it when they talk about it. But again, it's like as a pediatrician, as a doctor, my job is talking about health and not about what it costs, right? And the reality is that the better food costs more because they do it in a way that costs more. It's just that's the way the system is. And to me, I think it's important that if people are going to spend money, that's where you want to spend your money. And whatever you could do, whatever you can afford, that's where you are. And I think that whatever you can do within your means and your budget, that's where I would spend my money. To try to be healthier as much as I can, and if I was to focus anywhere, it's on that. So buy the healthier food, but in the bigger sense, like that is the discussion that has to be had in the policy level. And that's a part of why I got involved in the first place was I do think that at the end of the day, we're not going to change this completely until we change the system because
Mhm.
the system is incentivizing cheap and the system has to incentivize healthy. And it is possible, it's not possible tomorrow, right? But it is possible over the next 20 or 30 years if we incentivize small local farms,
Yep.
and we incentivize farmers to go regenerative, and we incentivize gardens and all of these things, then you're still going to need some mass producing for a long time. That's fine, but at least if we can decrease that and increase the better versions of it so that it become a little cheaper, so that way we can have more incentive to have a farmers market,
Mhm.
more farmers markets in our locations. Look into where are these food deserts and how do we get better food into those areas. And the ecology center is a perfect example of how we change the world, how you change America, because you take
Right.
this place that's like a parking lot or some sort of farm in the past or whatever, whatever it is, and
It
we
was
have
an empty lot.
empty lot. Like we have these capabilities now where you can turn these things into really good farms. And if every single city, like imagine if we like now we have a park, right? And every single amount of people and kids in an area, they like have to have park space. So what if we had the same kind of rules in the state where it was like, all right, for every 100,000 people, there has to be one local farm. That some of the land, if we have new land, like it has to go to become a farm instead of turning it into a playground or something, or maybe part of the playground of the park, or maybe you can go and look at all the public spaces that we have. They're just big open lots, and you take 10% of them, and you're like, all right, every park, if there's a big peak of grass, we're going to take 10% of it, and we're going to turn it into a farm. You know,
Yep.
like these are things that is a big idea, but like it could be done over the next 100 years if we prioritize it. It's possible to be done. So I just think that we need to fight for that for our kids. That we need to fight for more local farms. That way, at least a percentage of what they're getting is local.
I'm man, we're so on the same page. But and that's why I've said this for so long. And there are some nonprofits I know working on this, but it's like it needs to be like what you're saying I mean, the state, if not the federal level of just like, this makes so much sense. Because, yeah, I mean, when you look at what the city spends on landscaping and just HOAs in just, I mean, just take Orange County. I think we probably spend the most on like HOAs and city landscaping because everything needs to look like Disneyland and perfect. It's like if you took a fraction of that budget and said, or a percentage of the land and said, hey, this 10% needs to be edible and well maintained, we could totally do that. And these parks, if half of the parks or 10% had edible landscaping, not even a farm, not even where we're tilling the soil or like not tilling, but layering and putting effort, no effort,
Trees with like fruit.
fruit.
It's just there. Like go pick it. Whoever wants it, go get some fruit. Like it's not like you couldn't do it. You just need to have water.
That's it. Like, and we're already doing it. We're watering these plants that do nothing. We're importing a lot of these plants from the Mediterranean, so they're not native. Like, if we just took native fruit-bearing trees for just every region, and for us, we're in Southern California, that would be a win. Like, you'd have thousands and thousands of pounds of fruit. Now we're already paying these landscapers, pay them to collect the fruit and donate it to a food bank at the very least, right? Or local
Yeah.
schools. Like, just that alone and every city would be massive, right? And
I mean,
so
it's free in a sense in the long run, right? It takes some investment, obviously, and you have to have water, but you're already watering things anyways, and you're watering the plants, and you're spending all this money. So you could just you don't have to feed everyone like you said. Like it could be for food banks for to help with people that don't have food. You give that food to schools. You could have a government parks agency that has to do with the food, and then you have people that run it, and it's like government fund. Like if I want to give taxes, and we pay plenty of taxes in California, like I sure as heck would be fine paying a couple of dollars tax to fund a program that the government oversees the local farms and gardens for the kids, for the schools. Like that's a good use of money. Like what we all agree, like, hey, we want firemen. That's a good thing. We don't want fires.
right.
Like I think everyone would be totally fine if we were like, hey, everybody's given $1 and it's going to uh, cover that. We're going to turn every park or a bunch of parks into food.
I would
It's a
totally
no-brainer.
thumbs
You
up.
the people can just go pick oranges, like, why do you need to buy an orange from some other place when we live in California? Like, this is stupid. You should never have to pay for it. It should just be here for people.
Or what's wild is like literally one of our close friends grows bananas. She has so many banana trees. They grow so well. They're the little, like thick, fat, sweet ones, and they're so great. And it's like you can grow bananas here too. So you don't have to get that one from around the world. When we're talking about carbon and environment and climate change and all of this, it's like this would cut emissions like in half from logistics of just even food production. So there's so many layers here. But I wanted to someone's comment, or Courtney, shout out Courtney, great idea. My daughter's going to be a city regional planner. What you're saying is the future. Yes, and this is inspiring kids the future to not only be healthy, but be healthy so they can then be functioning healthy members of society going like I'm healthy and I want to create and again these kids are future regional planners, city directors, nonprofit directors to be like I'm healthy, I get this, I've invested in this and now I want to see this at a bigger level, right? That's how big these seeds grow. These tiny little seeds move mountains, right? These tiny little seeds just become forests, and that's what we're talking about here. So yes, please tell your daughter to make to plant a city that's edible where people can walk and just pick fruits. That'd be great. Um, and then to go back to what we were saying, I know we got off a little bit, but the whole idea with like the meat and eggs and all this, and follow up to that was how can I support hormone health boys school age, especially for my boys? Research is saying dairy is good for male hormone development. So these are some good questions, but that's the same person who's asking about meat and eggs. So I guess for you, Dr. Warsh, like what hormone health, I guess what you're seeing in school age children, or I don't know if you're touching on that, coming across that, parents concerned about that.
Well, I mean, there's certainly a lot of concern around early puberty, right? And
Okay.
that hormones are kind of all over the place. I think the research is still in its early stages because people are just starting to really recognize this as being a big problem. But I think that there's no question that the toxins and the chemicals that we're being exposed to are affecting our endocrine system and affecting our hormones. And that's one of the big reasons why we're seeing puberty so young, in kids that are under 10, it's starting and it's not even abnormal anymore, which it used to be, 12, 13, 14, 15, and now it's like 7, 8, 9. And why exactly, we don't really know. But I think there's a lot of concern around like plastic and BPA, and certainly a lot of concern around phthalates and around PFAS and forever chemicals. I mean, there's so many different things. I don't know if dairy is clear. I mean, I know there's concerns around soy and how it affects estrogen, but I think that at the end of the day, that it goes back to the same thing. I mean, you can read one thing and then you're going to get one answer, and you can read another thing that's going to give you the complete opposite answer. So it gets really, really confusing. I think from a very simple perspective, eat clean, eat healthy, eat real food, try to minimize your chemicals and toxins, and that's going to answer all of these questions.
Mhm.
You look at one study or one research paper, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, don't eat carrots," and then the next one's going to say, "You got to eat more carrots," and coffee is the best thing for you, it makes you live longer, and the next day it's so moldy, it's going to kill you. It's impossible to keep up. It's anxiety provoking. I don't think it helps. Just try to
Yeah.
get fresh local produce, know where it comes from, get the best quality that you can, and don't stress about all the other stuff. And I think that that's the issue.
Being integrative gut health registered dietitians for over a decade, we really wanted something. We wanted to formulate something that we didn't have when Dahlia was going through IBS and SIBO symptoms, gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, hunched over after every meal. That's why we formulated Gut Nurture. It was a mix of ingredients that we wish we had, that we had to pull from all kinds of different supplements in order to make a supplement that actually worked, that helped with motility, that helped lay the foundation to build a healthy gut microbiome. It's safe for kids, it's safe for women, men. It's safe if you have IBS, if you're low FODMAP, low histamine, low sulfur. The list goes on and on. We really made it a ubiquitous, amazing supplement to help your gut thrive, and it is something we wish we had over a decade ago that you have now. Try Gut Nurture, let us know what you think, and be one of the thousands and thousands using Gut Nurture to stay healthy daily. Yeah, and this is where I mean, and this is where a lot of these things are connected, right? Where if you're talking about dairy or you're talking about hormone health, yeah, it is just going for that low-hanging fruit, that low risk. And I think to piggyback off what you're saying is this idea of fresh, whole foods, whole ingredients, just the lowest risk food, let's say. And that would be I would say for me, if I had to pick between a soy milk, even for boys, and a dairy milk, I'd go with the soy milk, and I'll tell you why. Like when you're looking at dairy, it is breast milk, right? And the idea of breast milk is to transfer microbes, transfer hormones, transfer neurotransmitters. It's a medium to transfer because the mama cow is going, I want my baby cow to grow up big and strong, and I'm going to give my baby, just like humans give their babies, that those seeds, right? Those starting points, and we're nurturing the baby so they can grow up. Breast milk, unfortunately, we are going, hey, we don't want the human breast milk, bring in the cow breast milk. And this goes back to like an industry that has been built up, and an industry that's going, the cow's milk is cheaper, the cow's milk is more efficiently made, and we're going to make lots of money off it, so drink more cow's milk, right? Whether that's in a formula, whether that's in a toddler powder, whether that's in the milk itself. And I'm not here to demonize formula or powders. I know we always get backlash when we talk about this of like, I needed formula and all that. Yes. And this goes back to like the Western, there's many things that are great. Formula has saved babies' lives. We're not demonizing formula. What we're saying is, though, over the last 50 to 60 years, we've really transformed the mindset of many parents, right? Where they're stopping, and there's many factors to this where it's like, I'm not going to breastfeed, I'm gonna kind of outsource. We are kind of this outsourcing nation of going like, the cow will do my job better for me. Let's just bring in cow's milk. And so we really have to understand, what is that doing to kids? And when you look at the research, it is going, animals bioaccumulate. Animals are one of the biggest sources of dioxins when we're talking about endocrine disrupting chemicals. And these chemicals, synthetic chemicals, everything is a chemical, but we're specifically talking about synthetic chemicals that are found in the environment, from the plastic on my microphone and the plastic on your TV and the phones and all of this manufacturing. They get into the environment and they do bioaccumulate, specifically in animal fats. They are very lipophilic, and they love fats. And so when we eat fatty foods, think of cheese and think of breast milk of cow, like dairy and or high fat foods, they can be found in those foods depending where they're coming from. So yes, this idea of soy, and I want to touch on this because it's big, and I know everyone has so many questions, but soy has isoflavonoids. They're not bioidentical estrogen molecules that are going to make boys turn into females, or all these things people think of, but they're actually going to help balance estrogen in both males and females, right? When we're looking at soy isoflavonoids. So I know, go back, we've touched on this a lot of times, but that goes back to this idea of, yeah, what are we eating more local? And I would say, yeah, eating more of these whole foods and not really feeling like, "Oh, I need to go get some dairy," right? Especially when you look at the dairy farm and you'd be like, I want nothing that comes from an actual dairy farm, right? When you actually see the condition and where the milk is coming from. I know that's our 2 cents, and that's kind of our mindset with that, but
No, I
yeah,
get it. I agree.
yeah,
It goes back to, like, where is it coming from? You talk about dairy or soy. It's like, okay, you can't answer that question without knowing, well, where does the soy come from? How was it
right.
sprayed? How was it grown? Dairy, like, how are the cows' lives? What are they injected
Mhm.
with? Where does the cow milk go? How is it processed? Like, if you just go to some regenerative farm and drink milk right from a cow, or like a dairy, it's probably like amazing for you. But if you are like drinking it after all these hormones and it's been sent places and there's a bunch of chemicals in it. Like that's not so amazing for you, and that's why I'm sure that's why most people have a dairy sensitivity these days. It's like almost nobody in my office drinks dairy anymore, and
Yeah,
people that do, they always like that's the first thing you're talking about. Like, are you eating gluten or dairy? And not because gluten and dairy are like inherently the most evil things in the world, but the way that these two things are made.
yeah,
Especially in America and the way they're mass produced, our bodies just don't handle it anymore for most people. Some people do, some people handle it fine, but that's why you go to other countries and you eat the same thing, you drink the same thing, and you actually do okay because a lot of times they're just made in a different way. They're not as mass produced and they're not sprayed in as many chemicals and crap. And your body can then handle it at least a little bit better. So it's not to demonize
yeah,
anything. It's just to say like here's the reality. If you're drinking formula, like how are we getting all that formula? This stuff has
definitely.
to be mass produced. If you get it from some small local, thing, whatever, fine. But that's not the way formula is made. And you can't, we're not at a point where we can exactly reproduce breast milk, right? You can't.
Right.
And what you're saying again, it's exactly the way I talk about. It's not to demonize formula. Thank God that we have it because it saves your life if you can't breastfeed. There are people that cannot or choose not to. But the important thing is we have to have parents understand how important breast milk is so that they do it for as long as they can because they understand why it's useful, how you're getting these antibodies, how you're protecting your kid, how you're protecting them in the long run. So that way, it's not just like you hear this formula ad and just like they used to be. Like when I was growing up, my mom told me I was right when I read my first book. I was asking about my birth, and she was like, "Yeah, they encourage you to have formula." They
Mhm.
were like, "Yeah, you don't need to breastfeed. Like, take a break.
Yeah,
Why do you need to breastfeed? Like, we have formula here. Just use it." And that's the wrong messaging. It's the wrong messaging to just not understand the benefits of the natural thing. And we're glad that we have formula if you need it because maybe you can't produce any that will keep your baby alive and lots of babies do just fine on formula. But if you can breastfeed, you should do it for as long as you can. And if you understand why that's important, then if you were going to go for 4 months, maybe the parent goes for 5 months. 6 months, maybe you go for 9 months. You weren't going to do it, maybe you do it for 2 months. That's the important messaging that we need to get, so that way people understand these things matter. And it goes back to all food. It's not just breastfeeding, it's all of food. The things that you put in your mouth and in your kid's mouth matter. It builds up over time. Having a pizza one day is not the end of the world. But if you eat that stuff every single day, if you eat the chemicals and the dyes and tons of sugar, it adds up. It adds up to a chronic disease. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing these days. It's all of these things together. It's not one thing. You get a lot of hate about, oh, why are you talking about dyes? And like, I just came back from the FDA or the HHS. I was actually there. It was pretty cool to be there when they announced that they're going to be phasing those out over the next 2 years. And you still hear all the time, oh, but there's so many other problems. Yes, there are, but you have to take one thing at a time. We got to get the things out that are easy to get out that we know don't give us any benefit but have clear harm or potential harm one thing at a time. And if there's food dyes in it, it's not a natural product and it's not the same thing as eating an apple. So let's move forward. And that's my big message here to parents when you're talking about food is how do you move forward? Simple. Just simplify. That's it. Natural. You're going to get a long way, and the more of that you do, the healthier your kids most likely to be.
yes, I totally agree. I And I wanna touch on, yeah, I mean, with that, a comment I wrote down, yes, thank God I wrote down. Moms are the OG regenerative farmer at the farmer's market, right? Moms are making the breast milk, right? You want the most locally sourced regenerative milk, it's the breast milk, right? So keep that going. I know we have this kind of like, oh, at 1 year I need to stop. No, I mean, as humans, for most of human history, we can go up to 5 to 6 years old on average is when moms either stopped or were slightly breastfeeding just a little bit. I know for our daughter, we went up to 2.5 years old, and then she finally stopped. She would have kept going, and we were like, okay, that's enough for us, right? We need to stop. But and then another point too is this idea of, yes, keeping it simple. And this is another reason why we moved towards plants. It was in college, we were broke in college, and we're like, oh my gosh, this 5 pound bag of lentils with all this protein and nutrition is way cheaper than us trying to get really high quality meat for now. And then I just felt great with it and kept it going. I was like, I'm not a fan of that anymore. And this is what works for me. And going, oh wow, if I source all of these proteins from different plant sources, I'm getting wonderful amounts of nutrition and it tastes great and I'm learning to cook. And it was all these wins, right? And so the idea that it's expensive, like, yes, right? If you're getting the bag of chips or the fancy, if you're at Air One and you're going, I'm gonna eat plant-based at Air One, you're gonna spend like $500 for sure. But really, if you're getting dry lentils and nuts and seeds and grains, like you're not gonna spend that much, right? And so there's so much here, but man, this was wonderful. I just want to say a big thank you, and I want to be mindful of your time because I know you have a lot going on. And even just a comment on just one thing you said was the food dyes. And really quickly with that, I know I've been absorbing that. I've been seeing kind of what you were posting and so many others in a positive light. I've been seeing also some of the, I guess we'll call them haters, let's say, of just like, well, food dyes and junk food, like who cares? That's not going to do. And it's always like these kind of negative Nancy's, I guess. But it is this understanding of like, where do we start then? Like, you want to give this list of all this, like, this is what we should do. Okay, where do we start then with that? Did you magically snap a finger and your list of things we should do gets done? Like, no, this has been like decades in the making of finally getting people to realize artificial food dyes are not good. It reminds me of the people who demonize organic, like, oh, organic isn't perfect and there's still pesticides and there's issues. Okay, it's a start, right? What do you want? You want to jump this chasm without creating stepping stones, right? Like, these are stepping stones to something better. I think we all need to realize that, understand that, and not just always nitpick, and then we're never going to get anywhere, right? It's like those people who overthink and never execute, and we're never moving forward. We're just going to overthink, nitpick, and argue and not get anything done. So that, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been seeing that. I'm like, you want to complain about these things, it's a step in the right direction. Organic, if it wasn't for certified organic, we wouldn't have regenerative organic certified, which a lot of people are now moving to and waking up to, which is better than certified organic. This is how we move forward. And it's so important. So that is wonderful. I mean, anything to add with that? I just wanted to
Yeah, no,
mention some of those.
that's exactly that's the way I think about it. It's one step at a time. If you think that you're going to change the entire food system in a couple of months with the new administration or different people involved, like that's impossible. No matter what you do, I mean, you think you're gonna be able to easily deal with these huge corporations, like they're just going to be like, yeah, I guess we're just not going to sell our products anymore. Obviously not. Like you're going to have to fight them for a long time. You're going to have to take small wins. They're going to sue everyone up the wazoo. It's going to take many years. Of course they're going to do that. They don't want to go out of business. So hopefully you can start to create these wins, start this discussion, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to be faster and easier to transition this food because people want it, right? The more people that want it, then the companies will change on their own if you want that. Just like organic, like you're saying, they're going to make organic products if people are going to buy it if they're not going to buy the other stuff. So it's the same thing. If we are like, look, food dyes are crappy, don't buy food dyes, they're not good for you, then the companies will voluntarily transition them out if people stop buying it because they're going to start being like, oh yeah, you know what, that the crazy guy RFK that I don't like, but you know what? I kind of agree with him on food dyes. I'm not going to buy that anymore.
Yeah.
So you know, then they look at the product. "Ah, I'm not going to buy this bag of chips anymore with food dyes. You know, I'm gonna buy this other thing, and they stop selling those things. So they're just going to change it. They're not going to want to have to deal with making 15 different products.
Mhm.
So they're going to do it voluntarily or going to be pushed to do it, and that's why it's starting with that because it's low hanging fruit, like you said. If you can't get rid of food dyes, nothing's going to change. There's no nutritional benefit whatsoever. All these companies make these products in a different way in other places. We don't need these things. They have no nutritional value whatsoever. And we know that they have health problems and
Yeah.
related to them. And we know for sure, and they're probably related to more things, but there's no nutritional benefits. There's no reason to have them at all. So if we can't get rid of those, then what are we going to do? So that's one step. We're going to move in that direction. That's what I'm fighting for. That's what you're fighting for.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess just to finish, you know, if people want to follow me at Dr. Joel Gator, the new book, it's called the vaccine book's called Between a Shot and a Hard Place. And you know, we didn't talk too much about vaccines. That's what I've been mostly talking about these days. But this is a nice, refreshing chat about food, which is good.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Beautiful. And so yes, so make sure you follow Dr. Warsh and you connect and get his amazing books. And I want to say, I mean, on that though, I mean, with that, it's so many areas, but it's just being informed, right? It's informed consent when it comes to everything: your food, your water, your drink, your land, your neighborhood, what's growing there, what are they spraying? It's being informed. We should all be informed. We should have the freedom to be informed. We should have the freedom to educate ourselves and ask questions, absorb this knowledge, and then make the best decision. So whether that's, I know it can be controversial like vaccines, or not controversial, just saying breast milk and your food,
It's still
it's
controversial.
which I guess
Doesn't matter. Everything's controversial these days.
everyone has to say about something, but and that's okay. And that's why we have this discussion, we have this open dialogue, and we talk about it. But you should be informed. You should have the very best when it comes to education and research. And it's great to, and it's refreshing, I'll say, to have a pediatrician on that gets this, understands this, is integrative, and really wants to ask questions and help parents ask questions, seek deeper knowledge so their kids and families can be healthy. So that is beautiful. Did you say your website, Dr. Worship? What's a good website?
Yeah, integratedpediatrics.com, or you can go to thishotbook.com if you want to grab the book.
Perfect. And we'll have all that down below in the links below. Thank you so much. I know we could talk more, but I know we have other things on our schedules as always. But wonderful time with you. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you at dinner and really cool things coming up for next year in 2026. So all of you stay tuned for that. Make sure you connect with the links below so you're in the know and you're the first to know. As always, thank you so much. Catch us on the next Good Gut Live every Friday, as well as a big thank you for those listening later on the podcast, Good Gut Live podcast. And as always, feel with each meal and heal with each meal. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.